A galaxy unexplored. The Milky Way. A name spoken only in whispers across the great civilizations of the universe. A place marked on every stellar map with a single warning. No contact. No entry. No exceptions. For thousands of years, empires had risen and fallen, spanning billions of stars. They had discovered strange worlds, cosmic horrors, and celestial wonders beyond comprehension. But never had a single species dared to cross the threshold of the Milky Way. Not because it was unknown, but because it was known all too well. The first warning. 1,000 cycles ago, the Jorvin Dominion, one of the most advanced civilizations at the time, sent a fleet into the Milky Way. They were not invaders. They were not conquerors. They were explorers. Their mission was simple. Chart the stars. Observe the native species. Return with knowledge. But they never returned. Not one ship. Not one signal. Not even wreckage was found. The Jorvin spent centuries scanning the outer borders of the galaxy, desperate to learn what had happened. They sent probes. They sent long-range signals. They received only silence. Until one day they received something else. A single transmission. An audio file decrypted by the greatest minds of the Dominion. A whisper. A voice. 2 simple words, spoken in an ancient human tongue. Stay out. And the Jorvin obeyed. A dare across the stars. It became an unspoken rule among the great galactic civilizations. The Milky Way was off limits. For centuries no one questioned it. No one even thought of breaking the rule. Until now. The Karel Ascendancy, a rising power in the galactic east, saw the old stories as myths. Tales meant to keep them afraid. Passive. Weak. High Chancellor Vaquer, an ambitious leader, believed it was time to uncover the truth. If no species dared to enter the Milky Way, then the Karel would be the first. And so, the Ascendancy launched a small reconnaissance fleet, 20 ships, each crewed by elite explorers and scientists. Their mission? Breach the borders of the forbidden galaxy. Find what lay within. Prove the myths wrong. Crossing the threshold. The fleet approached the invisible boundary, the ancient threshold of fear. The galactic void between the known universe and the Milky Way's edge was unnervingly quiet. No satellites. No signals. No patrols. Just nothing. As if the galaxy itself had no need for defenses. And then, with a single command, they crossed the threshold. For a brief moment, nothing happened. No alarms. No resistance. The Karel fleet moved deeper, scanning empty space, feeling emboldened. Perhaps the stories were wrong. Perhaps there was no threat at all. But then their sensors went dark. A voice in the dark. The ships shuddered. Every system froze. The void around them twisted, as if the laws of physics had suddenly decided to change. And then the message came. Not in Karel. Not in galactic standard. But in a language they did not recognize, yet somehow understood perfectly. You should not be here. The fleet's admiral, a veteran of 100 campaigns, felt his twin hearts skip a beat. The voice was not a transmission. It was inside their ships. Inside their minds. He tried to respond, tried to demand answers, but the voice spoke again. You have made a mistake. Then the stars blinked out. Darkness falls. The Karel fleet was adrift in a sea of black. No stars. No planets. No markers of any kind. Just an abyss where the galaxy should have been. Admiral Kelt's mandibles clicked in frustration. Report. The officers scrambled, but the ship's instruments were useless. No signals. No location data. No exit points. It was as if the Milky Way had swallowed them whole. And then the voice returned. You were warned. Kelt's spines bristled. Who are you? Show yourselves. Silence. Then the sensors flickered just for a moment. A shape. A colossal mass, larger than any known dreadnought, hovering in the abyss. Not attacking. Just watching. The officers trembled. Something was here. And it was deciding what to do with them. A hunter in the void. Aboard the Veshaner, Karel scientist Vorik analyzed the incoming data. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't a ship. No energy signatures. No heat. No metallic structure. It didn't exist, yet it was right there. Then the whisper came again. You should not be here. This time Vorik felt it. Not through the comms, not through the speakers, but directly in his skull. The Karel had faced psychic species before. Telepaths, hive-mind entities, even mind-controlling parasites. This was different. This was not one mind. It was millions. No billions. A collective intelligence so vast it felt like an ocean pressing down on a single drop of water. and it was studying them. The first strike. Panic spread across the fleet. The officers did not wait for orders. They did what all creatures did when faced with the unknown. They fired. Energy beams, torpedoes, graviton warheads, all launched at the dark mass. Impact. A moment of silence. Then, without warning, the void moved, and the fleet began to disappear. Not exploded. Not destroyed. Simply erased. Ships vanished one by one, as if something had unwritten them from existence. Screams filled the comms, until the comms ceased to be. Admiral Kelt watched in horror as his fleet, his people, were wiped away by something beyond comprehension. Then the whisper came again. Go home. And the void swallowed him whole. The return of the dead. Admiral Kelt expected death. Or worse, non-existence. Yet, when his senses returned, he found himself somewhere else. He was no longer aboard the Veshaner. Instead, he stood in a vast, silent expanse. Not in space. Not anywhere. Before him, his fleet remained intact. Every ship. Every officer. As if nothing had happened. But something felt wrong. The stars beyond them were unfamiliar. Their charts, their coordinates, none of it made sense. They were no longer in the Milky Way. They were no longer in their own universe. An impossible prison. Admiral Kelt issued orders. Re-establish comms. Scan for known celestial bodies. But his officers struggled. The readings defied logic. Every scan returned contradictory results. Time itself felt distorted. Then the whisper returned. You are not welcome here. The admiral clenched his mandibles. Who are you? We are what remains. Remains of what? Kelt demanded. The voice did not answer. Instead, a shape appeared. Not a ship. Not an alien. But a human. The last watchers. The figure stepped forward. A single human in a simple, dark uniform, their eyes cold and infinite. Kelt had studied humans before. Ancient records. Myths of their strength. Tales of their warlike nature. But nothing had prepared him for this. The human spoke, not in galactic standard, not in Karel, but in a way that burned itself into his mind. This place is not for you. Kelt steadied himself. What is this? Where are we? The human studied him. Then with a voice like thunder they replied. You have trespassed where no one should go. You have glimpsed the last secret of the galaxy. And now, you must choose. The choice. Kelt's spine stiffened. What choice? The human stepped forward. You leave. You forget. You never return. Or. The human's expression darkened. Or you stay, and become nothing. Kelt's officers stared in silent terror. The Karel had prided themselves on courage. On conquest. Yet here, in the presence of this one human, their greatest warriors felt like insects. Kelt knew the truth. The Milky Way did not need warships. It did not need defenses. Because whatever humanity had become, no one dared to challenge it. He made his decision. We will leave. The human nodded. Then with a blink, the Karel fleet was back in their own space. Intact. Unharmed. But forever changed. And as they turned away from the Milky Way, they knew they would never return. Home but not whole. Admiral Kelt stood on the bridge of his warship, staring at the familiar stars of the Karel ascendancy. They had returned. Intact. Unharmed. Yet, the silence aboard the fleet was unlike anything he had ever known. No celebration. No relief. Only fear. They had ventured into the forbidden galaxy. They had seen something beyond reason. And they had been allowed to leave. That, more than anything, terrified them. Because what kind of power could erase an entire fleet, and then return it untouched just as easily? The order to forget. The High Chancellor of the Karel Ascendancy demanded a full report. What did you see? What did you learn? What threat does the Milky Way pose? Admiral Kelt stood before the council, his mandibles tightening. His officers, those who had survived the journey, refused to speak. They could not. The memories of what they had seen, of the being they had met, were too heavy to put into words. How could they describe it? A human stopped us. They spoke and we obeyed. They let us go because they did not consider us a threat. How could the Chancellor, how could anyone understand the weight of those truths? So instead, Kelt gave the only answer he could. There is nothing there for us. We must never return. The Chancellor scoffed. Superstition. Kelt did not argue. He only walked away, his mind already made up. The last transmission. As the fleet returned to normal duties, a single message arrived at the edges of Karel space. A simple transmission. Not a warning. Not a threat. A reminder. In perfect Karel script, written in an ancient human dialect long thought lost, it said, "Do not test our patience again." And with that, the message self-erased. Not hacked. Not traced. Simply gone. The meaning was clear. The humans were watching. A lesson for the galaxy. The Karel ascendancy never spoke of their mission to the Milky Way. The fleet's logs were sealed. The officers who had ventured there refused to discuss it. The Chancellor himself, once eager for conquest, did not push the matter further. Other galactic civilizations noticed. Rumors spread. The Karel entered the Milky Way. They came back without firing a shot. And they have never spoken of it since. No other species dared to follow. No empire, no fleet, no warlord ever challenged the silent domain of humanity again. And so the Milky Way remained untouched. Not because of its defenses, not because of its power, but because those who entered it once never dared to return. Rocket-like stories of humanity's legend? Subscribe to the Void Narratives for more.